What is weighing on your mind that you may need advice on? Am I the unreasonable one for refusing to stop having a relationship with my bio daughter because my girlfriend is uncomfortable? I've known my best friend Brenda since we were kids. I was the first person she came out to as a lesbian when we were in our senior year of high school and fully supported her. She met her current wife in college and they got married 6 years later. When I was 27, they both talked to me about wanting to start a family. They asked if I would consider being their sperm donor because they wanted someone they trusted rather than a stranger and who'd be there when their child started to have questions about their donor. I was honored that they thought of me and agreed to do it. It felt good to help people I care about start their own family. We went through the whole process and a year later, Brenda gave birth to their daughter, Lucy, after Lucy Lawless of course, haha. Since she was born, I've always been present in her life and we have a great uncle/niece type relationship. The three of us have been happy with how things are and they're glad I'm close with Lucy. She's already been told of how she came into the world, the full details, and while she knows I helped build their family, I'm still Uncle Steven to her. 3 years after she was born, I began dating my girlfriend. I didn't tell her about Lucy till 4 months in and it took her time to process this, but she eventually came around. We've been together 3 years now and planning on getting married. Last week was Lucy's 6th b-day and we both were at their house. After cake was cut, we all started taking pics. I told my girlfriend to come so we both could get one with Lucy, but she said no. Didn't think nothing of it until I noticed she was distant and hardly interacting with anyone. We talked after we got home and she said she didn't feel comfortable with me seeing Lucy anymore because it still felt weird that I donated sperm, and now I'm playing a role in her life when donors don't do that. This was a shock to me because she never brought it up before. When I said I wasn't gonna stop, she got frustrated and it became a huge fight. She didn't understand why I had to be in Lucy's life and it felt unfair that she has to share me with someone who's not my legal responsibility. At one point she asked if Brenda and I slept together and came up with this donor idea to cover the fact that I knocked her up, and that's why I'm involved. I get we were both angry, but asking that was out of line. I told her I'll never cut off my relationship with them and left our apartment. She's still been trying to convince me for days and to also consider her feelings in all this. To her, it's unreasonable to choose a kid that'll never truly be mine over her, someone I can have a future and a family with. I feel bad that she feels this way, but it seems like she's not being fair either. It's been rough and I don't know who's right or wrong. She's making me feel like the bad guy here and I need a neutral party's help. Am I the unreasonable one? My 26 years old female boyfriend, 29 years old male, won't use his real voice and it's becoming a problem. My 26 years old female boyfriend, 29 years old male, and I have been dating for just over 5 months now. In all other areas, things are going pretty well thus far. We've met each other's friends and I'm planning on introducing him to my family soon. My boyfriend's voice seems to fluctuate a lot, way beyond what is normal. 99% of the time he'll speak in this heavy, guttural voice that sounds like an action hero or something. I know that some men have a deeper voice naturally, but my boyfriend's voice is far deeper than anyone else I know IRL. It's practically a growl, but as we've been spending more time together, I've noticed that there are certain times his voice sounds way different. For example, a few days ago I asked him a question in the middle of the night when he was almost asleep and his voice sounded much more normal. Whenever he's excited or taken by surprise, he lets this other voice slip. This other voice is much higher in pitch and more nasal, why, if that makes sense. It's nothing like the voice I associate with my boyfriend. When we first started dating, I remember noticing that my boyfriend had a voice that was lower in pitch than average, but never thought much of it. But I was watching a saved video of the two of us from a few months ago and comparing now to then there has been a significant drop in pitch. His voice is so gravelly now that he basically sounds like the Christian Bale Batman voice if the guy had also been a chain smoker. This didn't really seem like an issue until I was thinking about it the other day and I brought it up to my BF just out of interest. What I wasn't expecting was for him to absolutely shut down, telling me to mind my business and that his voice had nothing to do with me. Obviously this relationship is new, but he's never flipped out at me like that before. He's actually usually a pretty good communicator. How should I handle this? I don't really understand the issue here or what is getting him upset, but I get the feeling it's something we need to talk about if it's making him react like this. I don't know why he'd put on a voice that is so much deeper than his natural one, especially considering nobody really talks like he does in real life. DLDR, boyfriend is angry because I brought up him putting on a way deeper voice all the time. I don't know why this is an issue. My mom dumped my siblings on me and ghosted. I have no idea what to do. Yeah, this is a doozy. I've been trying to share it since it happened, but just haven't really been able to process it. So I'm 23M, and I'm the oldest of 5 siblings, the others are 16M, 14F, 10F and 10M. Our mother is severely bipolar, but very resistant to treatment and, to be frank, is an absolutely crap mother. I've done my best my whole life to raise my siblings since she clearly isn't going to, and I like to think I've done quite well. I managed to keep them out of the care system most of the time, at least. 2 years ago, I finally moved out of my mom's house and started university. I stayed in the same town in case the kids needed me, but I decided I had to start putting myself first a little bit, and I couldn't keep putting off my own life because my mom is a failure as a parent. You know, with the exception of a few minor incidents, it's actually gone rather a lot more smoothly than I thought thus far. I currently have a house with 2 other students from my uni, though one is currently back in her hometown for the lockdown. So, the problem: yesterday, there was a knock on the door around noonish. I wasn't expecting anyone, but figured maybe it was the postman or my flatmate had ordered out for his lunch or whatever and opened it. To my shock, all 4 siblings are stood on the doorstep looking about as confused as I felt. 16-yo informed me that mom had dropped them off here without saying why or where she was going, and she was in the middle of a pretty intense manic episode and was just sort of rambling nonsensically instead of answering any questions. Of course I wasn't going to abandon the kids, so I let them in and have been trying desperately to get hold of mom ever since. I know she's getting my texts because I've been sending them on WhatsApp and it's showing me she's reading them. Also, when I call, it's ringing 2 or 3 times and then cutting out, so she's clearly seeing the calls coming in and rejecting them, rather than it ringing out. I've tried reaching out to her friends with very similar results. I don't know what to do. I don't have the space for 4 kids in the house and it's so unfair to my housemate, though bless his soul he's an absolute angel of a guy and keeps telling me not to worry and he's fine with it. I currently have the girls staying in other housemates' vacant room, with her permission, and the boys are in my room with me. Obviously not ideal. I also frankly can't afford to take care of 4 kids all by myself. No idea what groceries are gonna look like from here on out. The kids haven't brought many belongings with them, so they don't have many clean clothes. 16M and probably 14F can get away with wearing my clothes if it comes to it, but I have no idea how I'm gonna clothe the twins if they're here for more than a few days. I don't want the kids going into the system if I can avoid it. I've had too many traumatic experiences with it myself. Can anyone wiser and calmer than I am offer some advice on what my options are here? Am I the unreasonable one for getting our teacher suspended for using red and green pens in class only? I'm a 19 female currently attending university. One of my main professors insists on using the whiteboard in class, for explaining everything and anything, whether it's words or diagrams or explanations, so it's pretty important to be able to read. Here's the problem: I'm colorblind and I cannot distinguish the difference between red and green. Like at all. It just looks the same to me. This is a common problem, so I always carry a black and blue whiteboard marker pen with me to give to a teacher in case there isn't a blue one around. It saves time and embarrassment on my behalf, so I tell my professor my problem and the first lecture goes fine. He doesn't use green, and uses my blue and black pens instead. I don't know why, but this room only had green and red. The next lecture, however, I give over my pen and he starts to use the green and red pens to explain graphs and stuff. Completely ununderstandable to me. So I raise my hand in a room of like 120 people and ask him if he can use the blue pen I gave him so I can actually see the difference in lines. The professor then kinda scoffed and said he couldn't change now or the rest of the class would get confused. I just nodded and looked away because his tone was so condescending. The rest of lecture he used green and red, so I just couldn't write up my notes. Insert a super amazing girl in front of me asked for my email and sent me her notes that she was creating on her computer. She even changed all the coloring so I could see it properly, and I was so shocked when I got them I nearly cried. People don't do this often, lol. Anyway, I emailed the professor and asked him one last time if he could just use a blue pen instead of red or green, and he emailed back almost instantly to tell me that a lot of work is done in green and red and I'll probably struggle with it anyway. I got so mad I emailed up the head of our school and told them everything I said here. The next day rumor was going around he was suspended, and I got a confirmation of it later that day when the head of school contacted me for a meeting in a few days. I feel pretty bad. I don't want this guy's career to suffer just because of some pens, lol. The stress is getting to me. Am I the unreasonable one? Am I the unreasonable one for telling my wife she can't have her dream job because I refuse to be burdened with all of her student debt? My wife and I married young, in our early 20s. 4 years later she's about to graduate from law school. The issue is she has a ton of student debt, around $195K from both undergrad and now law school. But over the past year she's completely changed her mind about law and becoming a lawyer. She now wants to teach and do teach for America after graduating. She told me this past week. We've talked about this at length and she wants to do this because it's her new dream job. Previously it was law. I'm upset because if she teaches, her starting salary will barely clear $35K in the first few years, and we live in a really expensive city. She has no intention of going back into law later, as well as she says law school was a mistake. Last night we were talking about the future and she mentioned our plans to have kids in a few years and how she'd like to be a stay-at-home mom in a few years as well. I looked at her and asked how she thinks we're going to afford that when we've got nearly $200K in debt on my one income. She got mad and said I'm trying to use her debt to postpone major life events, like having kids. We ended up fighting and I told her she can't just teach if she expects me to be saddled with her debt as a result. I said she should at least work a high-paying job for a few years to repay a good portion. She said I'm prioritizing money over her happiness and that she's disappointed in my lack of support when they would be my kids and my life as well. Am I the unreasonable one to tell her that if she chooses to go down this path, I may need to rethink our marriage? I haven't said anything like this yet, but I am thinking it. Based on her timeline, she'd only work for 3 to 4 years before becoming a homemaker. I'd have $200K worth of debt to work through completely on my own, and I don't know if I can do it or if it'll completely ruin the rest of my life. Am I the unreasonable one to say this? My 32 years old female husband, 36 years old male, became a robot and I don't know how to help him. The title sounds insane, but here I go. We've been married for 6 years and have 2 kids. I'm pregnant with a third. My husband works from 9 to 5, comes home, does his chores, plays with our 2 kids, talks to me for a little bit, and then goes to sleep, but he doesn't seem to enjoy doing any of it. Like this whole thing is one big chore. He used to be this goofy guy who smiled and told jokes all the time, but I haven't seen the man smile in months. It's not like he's neglecting his duties as a husband and father, but he acts like it's just that, duties, like hanging with the kids and me as a second job. I'm grateful for all he's doing, and he makes all of our lives so much easier, but it's like he's constantly on the clock and I think he might be depressed. I tried asking him if he was doing okay and he tells me he's doing fantastic, but I know he's not. That's the line he uses at work when customers try to make small talk and ask how he's doing. He doesn't take any time for himself. He doesn't take any breaks. He stopped playing games and stopped watching TV. He just does what I feel he thinks needs to be done and I don't know how to help him out. Our sex life has become one-sided. We do it frequently, but only because I initiate frequently. Even if he doesn't seem in the mood, he'll do it. Like it's his responsibility to make me happy. It feels like he isn't there in the moment. Like his mind is wandering the whole time we're intimate, and that, to me, feels worse than getting rejected. I don't know what's going on, and I don't know how to help because he won't let me in. To anybody else he seems fine, but I know something is wrong and I don't know how to fix this. I miss my husband, the guy who complained and told jokes, not this robotic shell that looks like him. Also, I want to thank you all for your advice. I really appreciate it. It's clear to me now that my husband is overworked and burned out. He comes home from work in a couple hours and I'm going to sit him down and talk to him. I'm going to tell him how I feel, and I hope that together we can find a solution that turns him back into the man he once was. I'm sorry I wasn't able to respond to everyone, but I want you all to know I read every response. I'll post an update soon about how it goes. Update. My husband came home at around 6 o'clock. And after he had something to eat, I took him to the bedroom to talk. I sat him down on the bed and told him I was worried about him. I didn't know exactly how to phrase my worries, so I just showed him my original post. When he finished reading the post, he started crying, like full-on crying. In all the years that I have known this man, I had never seen a tear roll down his eye. I held him for a few minutes until he could recompose himself, and he told me everything. He told me that the world was in a lousy place right now, and that we're bringing a child into a stressful time. He said when I became pregnant he felt he had to step up. He needed to take care of things because it was his responsibility. He said that the weight of carrying the family was so much harder than he anticipated, so he thought if he doubled down he could get through it. But the more he tried, the darker the tunnel got, and eventually he couldn't see an end. He said that he feels like he's constantly drowning, and the only breath of fresh air is on the car ride between home and work. He said that sometimes the stress is so much that he throws up, but doesn't tell anyone and instead keeps going with his day. He then pulled out a pack of gum from his pocket and said this was for when it happens. I asked him why he couldn't tell me any of this, and he said he didn't want to burden me with the truth. He said that he thought if he told me everything, that I would stop seeing him as a protector and provider, and that I would inevitably stop loving him. Hearing him say that brought tears to my eyes because I didn't know where he got the notion I would feel that way. I asked him if he wanted to quit his job, but surprisingly he said the job doesn't bother him. He said the work in of itself was fine. It's just now he feels an added weight to provide because not only was he fortunate enough to keep his job in the pandemic, but we also had a kid on the way. He said that some days he feels like packing a suitcase and running to some tropical island for a week and not telling anyone. But then he feels guilty and doubles down even more. I told him that maybe he should go on a trip. I said that he deserved a break, and maybe if he did exactly that he'd feel better. He tried to protest, but I insisted. In the end said that he'll only go if we go together, like a romantic getaway between spouses. Once things start to clear up and before the baby is due, he wants to take a week off from work, drop the kids off at grandma's house and have us go on a vacation, just the two of us, like we used to when we first got married. He also said he wants to take the day off tomorrow and just sleep in, so that's the plan. I'll call his boss tomorrow and say that he's sick and can't come in. It's not like they'll make a sick man come into work. There's a pandemic going on. Smile. Right now he's playing with the kids and it doesn't feel like he's doing one of his chores. He actually seems to be enjoying himself. For the first time in months I don't see the robot, I see my husband. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.